Today's episode of Dungeon Crawlers Radio is brought to you by Gamers Inn, your one-stop location for all your gaming needs. Located in Lehigh City, Utah, their fun and friendly staff will be more than happy to answer any of your gaming needs. Just remember, Gamers Inn, it's where adventures begin.
It's time to power up.
Autobots, roll out! Broadcasting live from the DCR studio.
Oh yeah!
The Geek Revolution starts here.
Excellent!
Get ready for the #1 hit geek radio show out there.
Well, it is impressive, isn't it?
Because it's time for Dungeon Crawlers Radio. Let's get ready to rumble!
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for.
Alright everyone, welcome to another episode of Dungeon Crawlers where Scott's disappeared, Varen got sucked into a vortex of goo, and Mackenzie's eating pizza somewhere, and we've got John M. Olsen, author of Crystal King, as well as several other works that are out there.
Yeah, a pile of short stories.
Yes. So, tell us a little bit about what Crystal King is, and then we can jump into having all sorts of fun when talking about writing and everything else.
Okay, well, the story is about a young man who is the second son of a baron. It's usually kind of a throwaway position.
Yeah.
There's no inheritance, nothing like that. But his father and his brother, the heir, both come up missing. And so he has to lead his people as an army is invading, and so he has to take them to safety as the army chases them through the countryside.
Nice.
So it's kind of a story of dedication and honesty. One of the things that I decided to do is to find 4 words that really exemplify the story.
Yeah.
It's family, honor, duty, and betrayal. It's kind of like one of these things does not belong with the others.
Yeah. So, this character is the second son, so pretty much he's probably the slacker of the family because there's no reason to do anything. Am I right or wrong? Because
yeah, he's kind of the goof off, the rebellious kid who doesn't want to do what his dad has said. And yeah, he's 18 years old, and so he's getting to where he should be a responsible adult and hasn't figured out how yet.
Yeah. Because, traditionally, in most monarchies, the first son gets everything. And the rest of the kids are just, unless something happens to him, there's no point paying attention to you. At least from what we've seen in literature and movies and stuff like that, and even history.
Yeah, it can sound a little bit like one of the usual tropes where, you have the big inheritance, then you have the waif who doesn't get anything. But I decided to play with that a little bit.
Oh, and there's nothing wrong with picking up those tropes. That's the fun of getting to write. You get to twist those tropes around and make them work for you.
Well, yeah, that's something that I've seen with a lot of really popular authors is they will take some of those standard ideas and do something new and interesting with them.
Yeah. So, he inherits the throne. Dad's missing. Older brother's missing. Army's coming in. He's got to get them out. What emotional conflicts do we see the character go through? Because you've got to assume he's second-guessing everything because he hasn't paid attention to any lessons or anything like that, I would assume.
Right, yeah, he's the kind of guy who has dodged his training and goofed off, but he really has a place in his heart for the people.
Okay.
But he's never really had a chance to do anything about that.
Yeah.
And so suddenly the whole world changes out from under him.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity for him to make a mark on the world where he never had that before. The problem is he has to break a lot of the standing rules of society to keep his people safe. And so it's all about the motivations.
Yeah.
Because other people break rules and do things the wrong way, but it's generally for selfish reasons. He has to do it for the altruistic reasons. Like, this is the only way these people will stay alive.
Wow. No, I like that. I like the fact that his core belief is about, family and his kingdom, the people. So that gives a lot to that character and, why he's not belling on everything and running away as well. So that's pretty cool. Now, this is the first book of a series.
Yeah, you have Crystal Kings to start off with, and then Crystal Queen, and then the third volume will be Crystal Prince.
Okay.
One of the things that I like to play with is, as you read the story, it's not exactly clear who the title refers to.
Okay. I like that. I do like that. Now, see, you wrote a bunch of short stories. Was the leap from writing short story to a full novel a big one? Or was it kind of, it was just kind of the next step?
Well, there are some distinct skills that short stories won't teach you, but basic story structure, things like that, you really can learn an awful lot writing a bunch of short stories. So I've got, I think, 7 that are published, 3 that are still scheduled to come out, a bunch more that are kind of in the works trying to find a home. And so they taught me a lot about different kinds of story and about character development, even just story structure. I saw a chart the other day that compared all of the different story structures, whether you're talking about Save the Cat or about a dozen different structures, and it lined them all up and showed how they had parallel pieces in all of these different structures. And so once you start to understand that structure, then you can start to add the layers of complexity that a novel has, where you have multiple things going on at the same time, switching between characters. A short story, you really don't have the option to have several points of view, for instance.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one thing I found. It was always fun, but at the same time complex, where you're bouncing from one point of view to the next and having to jump to another character that may not be in the same area and trying to bounce those different storylines until they mesh together. So, yeah, it's fun. Definitely more complicated than a short story where you're normally just in that one point of view.
Yeah, I like to apply, well, I'm a computer geek at heart. I've written software for like 30 years or so.
Okay.
But I like to apply the idea of recursion, where you have the overall story structure, and then you have subsections of it that can each have their own little overall story structure, and you can keep breaking that down. So a chapter might have a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like a story has a beginning, middle, and end. And you can keep breaking it down that way. And you may even have sentences and paragraphs that can still follow that same structure a little bit. And so having that and interleaving the multiple characters and all of that, that's where the short stories really aren't going to train you for all of that. And so you have to learn some of those skills in addition to what the short stories can teach you.
So being a computer programmer and then writing, that's kind of left-right brain. I mean, almost the exact opposite. How does that work?
Well, I like to think of myself as kind of a Renaissance man wannabe.
Okay.
And so
Nothing wrong with that.
I do creative things. I have a wood shop that I call my secret lair out in the backyard. And I like to build things, do creative stuff that way as well. Built cabinets and tables, and I use a lathe to make pens, things like that. So lots of little decorative boxes. So I try to exercise the artistic half of my brain.
Yeah. So you're a jack of all trades, really. You got the computer stuff, you got the wood stuff, you're writing, being creative in both, because even computer programming is being creative in one fashion, because you got to string the line of code to make it work. What is so exciting and appealing with writing then?
Well, just like the things that I build in my shop, I just love the idea of creating things.
Okay.
Whether it's a story, whether it's a box that I'm building out of a piece of scavenged lumber, I just like making things.
Okay. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so that's the idea with the short stories. It's something that wasn't there when I started.
Yeah. And now you have a story that's woven together and it's entertaining.
Yeah, I can find some stray log. For instance, I was at Dave Butler's house a while back, scavenging some scrub oak from his backyard, and I made a box for him out of some of the wood that I had collected there. So things like that. It's a lot of fun to just make something to show, okay, this is inverse entropy. Normally the world breaks down and destroys things. I like to counter that.
Yeah. Well, and the really cool thing is, with like that, you're seeing something out of this piece of wood that no one else is seeing. It just looks like a log or a broken stump or whatever, and you've turned it into a box that has value. You can put stuff into it and has probably an amazing appearance than just that piece of wood that was sitting there. So, we've talked about the hero. We've talked a little bit about the story. Is there a villain in the story?
Yes, there is the invading king.
Okay.
Well, he's the primary villain.
Oh, we've got more than one villain. That's always a good thing.
Like, there are some spoilers I could go into about other villains, but
Okay, well, we can
those
avoid those so
those are
people
best
will read the book.
discovered as you read it. Yeah.
Nice.
I've even got a kind of a weaselly guy who is supposed to be one of the allies, but is still kind of a thorn in the side of our hero, Gavin.
Yeah. Those are good. I like those.
Yeah, so he's the penny-pinching accountant who likes to squeeze the peasants for extra funds.
Okay. Fun. We've seen that before, but I'm sure you have your own unique twist to that.
Yeah, the challenge is, they're abandoning everything. And so how do you evacuate and abandon all of this, the castle, the village that goes with it, and then still portray him as the Weasley penny pincher? So there's some interesting things.
That's a really good one, yeah. I mean, there's some challenges that come along with that because everyone's just like leaving everything. How do you get him to still pay collect the taxes and stuff like that without being too overt, I guess, where the king sees what's going on?
Yeah, so he's the kind of a bad guy light.
Yeah.
And he's always trying to look for his own personal advantage.
Okay. So he might be siphoning a few funds off from his collections. Nice. I like when there's more than one villain in a story. And the reason for that is, like you were saying, you have the smaller story arcs. And some of those smaller villains help with that, because it takes forever to get to that big villain. Because we got to crest the whole story before we finally get to that moment.
Right.
And so by having those smaller villains and the things that are happening with them, it kind of helps fuel the story and the reader's interest and move things along.
Yeah, being the computer geek that I am, romance is one of those things that's really a challenge for me to write because I really
You're not
haven't
the only one.
done much. And so that was one of the challenges that I decided to give myself for this, is to put a little bit of a love story in there, nestled in amongst all of the other stuff.
Wow. Yeah, that's one thing, even writing my book, I hint at it and stayed away from it. I know I'm going to have to get to it because I just don't know how I'm going to write that. So how did you deal with that then?
Well, a lot of it was a matter of keeping them apart, not seeing each other, and in the beginning not hinting that they know who each other even is.
Okay.
And so it's a matter of long-lost loves stumbling back into each other.
Okay. I can see how that would work really well. I mean, we've kind of got the Romeo and Juliet separation type love thing, but then they don't know who they are, coming back together, seeing each other for the first time, and
Yeah, someone has kept them apart for a long time.
wow. On purpose.
Yes.
All
As
right.
leverage. Yeah, it's one of the bad guys.
Okay. So look at that. You guys are already finding out awesome reasons to read this story. Penny pinching accountant guy that everyone hates. Long lost lovers that are being kept apart by a horrible villain, and the king and the invading army. We need to. Yeah, why not? You have to read this. It's awesome.
Now, there's also the magic system, which I decided to take another fairly common idea and turn it around again.
Okay.
I don't know if you have seen any of the Anne McCaffrey Crystal Singer books.
Yes.
I decided to do something with crystals.
Okay.
And I'd read those books when I was a teenager several centuries ago or whatever it was. What I did with the crystals in my story is they are a way of controlling animals.
Okay.
You take a crystal pair, the person wears one, the animal wears the other, and the person can take over the senses of that animal and walk around as that animal.
Okay.
And so the barons and the kings and all of that, they use those for war making. And so that way the people can control the animals and the animals do the fighting for them.
Interesting. So people don't actually fight. They don't die. It's the animals.
Well, the important people.
Oh, okay. Yes, we must rephrase that. It's only the important rich people that can do this.
Right.
The peasants, yeah, they have to go out and fight.
Uh-huh.
Normal warfare, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things that I like about some of the fiction that I read is when they take a situation and they look for all of the weird ramifications and consequences of whatever the technology or magic is.
Yeah.
And so I tried to do that and think through it. Okay, if this is something people can do, what kind of weird things could you do with it and what can happen?
Yeah.
And so that's where I came up with some of the standing rules that all of the kings are supposed to obey, is to keep some of those weird things from happening.
Yeah. So there is a counterbalance to the magic that they're using.
Yes, anytime you are actually in a trance controlling an animal, you lose all of your own sensory input, so you are just laying there open to whatever happens to come by.
So you could easily be assassinated.
Yes.
Yeah. So you'd probably want to be in a locked room with tons of bodyguards and.
Yeah. So it's a matter of guarding your body while you're out gallivanting around.
Yeah. So I mean, in a way, it's almost like an astral projection.
Yes.
But you're projecting yourself into this animal.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I go into some of the interesting things like, what's it like to fly?
Mm-hmm.
And the sense of freedom and seeing things. And at one point, some of the teenagers are talking and deciding, it'd be really cool to be able to dive bomb the caravan.
And so they do, I'm sure. Yeah. And they probably, there might be some pooping, I'm sure, the teenagers, I'm sure. Yeah. Something like that happens. You never know. But, no, I like that idea. So why did you choose this type of a magic system?
Well, it kind of falls back to the techno brain that makes me kind of lean to the tech side really heavily. I like something that's well defined. The magic systems, like Gandalf, you don't know what he can do, what he can't do, what the limits are. I like to have something that's well spelled out and easy to understand. Mm-hmm. And so I came up with a very specific set of rules. There's not an awful lot to it. And so it makes it easy for me to evaluate and see how things can interact with it.
Yeah, it's almost very Brandon Sanderson-like, where there's laws that govern the magic and there's this and that.
Yeah, mine are just a lot simpler.
Yeah, yours are definitely a simpler format of it. Other than, traditional magic that's been out there for eons, it seems like, where it's just throw a fireball, there's no explanation, they just do that, which in some ways is good, but what I really like is when authors actually invest into that magic system and there is an explanation, there is laws and reasons around it. It's not just, they can just do it for whatever. They can't do it unless there's pairing crystals. That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. It's not just, I want to be a cat today, and bam, he's a cat.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges with magical systems. Is I wanted to get away from the typical spellcasting D&D kind of effect.
Yeah. So, no, that's always really cool, and it explains a lot now about the cover, why there's a bear on there. I'm assuming there's a bear that comes into play at some point. Yeah,
and the whole background of the cover is like shattered crystal.
Yeah. So Mackenzie's returned from her quest to eat pizza and flirt with Russ Adams.
Actually, technically, I was talking to Russ again.
Okay. Well, see, you were flirting with Russ Adams. I was right.
Shh. We can't let his wife find out about that. Otherwise, we can't do polar shenanigans tomorrow.
Well, he already kind of admitted that. You are chaining him up into a hearse with you.
I have no shame.
Yeah. So...
That's an awesome cover.
I'm really happy with the cover. This is one that was designed... Actually, I'm not sure who the designer was.
Come on back to the haunted trader.
The voices from above.
The voices from above are speaking to us.
That's what we need to call them this convention.
Well, we're doing it from convention. The voices from above.
Yeah, I'm not sure who Jason King had worked with to develop the cover, but it's all done through Immortal Works.
Yeah. I mean, it's not an overly complicated cover, but it's definitely striking. It calls to you. The shield with the bear on it, it's very interesting. If I were to walk through a bookstore and pick it up, I'd want to look at it. And that's something that, I've talked about book covers, is that's, as much as we always say don't judge a book by its cover, people do.
Yep.
And it has to be interesting enough to spark a response to be interested. What you immediately had, you saw it, and you're like, ooh, I'm interested. And as simple
If
as
it
that
looks
is,
pretty.
it does. It catches the eye and it says, "You want to read me?"
Yeah, it's not an oil painting like a Hildebrandt Brothers kind of picture.
Yeah.
It's very iconic.
Yeah. No, it is. I like it. It's very.
Well, and I don't think
simple.
I've seen anything like that recently.
No, not recently.
Oh, God. I know the name of the first book. It's called The Demon King. I believe the author is Cinda Williams Shima or something, but she has 2 series, and her books were very similar to this. They were like, they weren't as pretty because it didn't have this background, but it just had like that one symbol, and that simplicity really jumped out at me because I didn't judge the book by the cover because there wasn't enough to judge it by. Does that make sense?
It does, but at the same time, whatever was on the cover was still enough.
It was still enough to grab my attention, and it's the same with that one.
Yeah, so right here you can see, crystal background, and there's an animal on a shield. So people are fighting, there's animals involved.
it's that one?
And rocks.
That's the one.
Yeah. So it looks like a pendant with a dragon
Oh, wait, maybe I'm thinking of the Warrior Air.
or some sort of serpent. I mean, it's still very simple. Yeah,
I love those
and
books.
sometimes those are the best. I mean,
Well, they are. Sometimes and as much as I love Harry Potter, sometimes I feel they overloaded those book covers just a little too much with like the symbols and like the teases of the book, almost to the point where it gave it away.
Well, then it depends on which version of the cover,
Yeah.
because I've had several.
Yeah.
they have.
Yeah.
There's been some that are very simplistic, but there are some that
Well, I actually like
have
the-
been done because
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking towards middle grade and kids, you have to be very visual in the cover.
That's why I like the adult versions
yeah.
better.
So it definitely calls out to those kids because they're like all flashy in that. More adult, you want more simplest. Young adult seems to kind of be this weird paradox, at least that I've found, that are in the middle. But I could see that calling out to everyone, to be honest.
Yeah, even if you look at European book covers, they have distinctly different
yeah.
tastes. And so you have to
Harry
get
Potter
somebody...
is a clear indication.
Yeah, if you don't understand what Europeans are looking for in covers, you need to get somebody who does if you're ever going to put a new cover on something.
Well, yeah, I mean, just seeing like different
Like Outlander,
cover.
as an example, when Outlander was
Yeah.
published.
Yeah. When with Brandon's covers, seeing his European or his Taiwanese or his English covers, they're vastly different. Even Dan Wells, his German covers for I Am Not a Serial Killer, completely different.
And that's because somebody did their market research.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and it's true. I mean, cultures have different, like
That's interesting.
Chinese cultures do not like ghosts. They don't like ghosts and that because they respect their ancestors and stuff like that. So, like Ghostbusters wasn't shown over there, the new one.
Really?
Yeah. They found it offensive. So, you have to
Well, I know
focus
Wonder
on your
Woman.
target and stuff like
Wonder
that.
Woman wasn't shown in Syria, somewhere back there, because Gal Gadot is Israeli.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's interesting stuff like that, but definitely, if you're writing and working with a publisher, make sure they do their marketing, especially when they're going to another country.
Just a little
Because
bit.
you never know.
You don't want to offend them, because back to Outlander.
It's like Varen was saying in our last show. He had, I can't remember what country it is, but the word "yup"
Oh yeah, Slovakia.
Slovakia is
I think.
a very obscene word. It's like saying the F word here, and people would go over there and they're like, "Hey, do you want to eat this?" And U.S. Americans would say, "Yep," and then suddenly they're like looking at him like, "What?" I mean, it's as simple as that. It's a word we use all the time, but to them, it's very vulgar and yeah.
My brother-in-law taught me how to flip off in French,
Yeah, almost everyone knows that.
but
Two
I didn't know
fingers.
what that meant
Yeah.
until he pointed it out,
Well,
and
that's
now I have issues.
Yeah, that's because the English would show them their bow fingers.
Ah,
Because back then, the French would capture the Englishmen and chop off their bow fingers.
they don't show that in Robin Hood.
Yeah. So that's where that gesture came from, was the English showing them their bow fingers. Yeah. Interesting fact.
Now that's a Robin Hood I would like to see. Have them have them get caught and get the Poe fingers cut off.
Get the finger, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the thing about a lot of stories these days is we have sanitized memories of what we think might have happened
Oh, I
in
know.
the past.
Yeah.
When there was an awful lot of just horrible brutality that was normal everyday stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, let's gather together and watch them hang somebody today.
Well, we were talking
or
about
stone
horror
'em.
movies
Yeah.
earlier, how they're so different, how they were so different in the 80s versus nowadays.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's just, that's everything evolves, but that's what I love about ancient history, though, is if you actually research, it is brutal, it is mean.
And they don't apologize for it.
But beyond that, it is amazing what these generals and that were able to accomplish and do with, like, they didn't have guns, they didn't have missiles. The closest thing to a missile they had was
Hannibal's
trebuchets or
amazing.
ballistas and catapults.
It was just pure
But,
strategy.
Yeah, it was strategy, horses. Genghis Khan.
Of the devil.
Amazing
Is that
what he
thing
did.
back?
No,
Oh.
I know. So it's just interesting what they were able to accomplish. Nowadays, we push a button, a missile flies over, they do a strike, or it's over.
Yeah, even fighter pilots, most of the time they don't really see what it is they're shooting at.
Yeah. And so back then it was up close and very personal.
Well, it's interesting. Have you guys ever seen the CBS show Madam Secretary?
No, I have not. I can't say I have.
So the husband is a Gulf War, the first one, era fighter pilot.
Yeah.
And they were talking about that, about how him coming back from war was different than this guy they had just dealt with because he was seeing his target from 20,000 feet and not up close and personal.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see just how much of that psyche it affects. You're going to get affected either way. The question is to what extent.
Well, I think it would be easier not seeing that. There's that kind of cloud of deniability. Well, it didn't hit anyone. I'm good. But up close and personal, that you see that person right there and then. I don't know. In a short story I wrote, I had my character, he was only 14, fighting and killing someone for the first time. It affected him, and I had to write those emotions into it. And, it's just not, you see it in movies where they slice someone and go on and move on, but they never really focus on how that affects someone afterwards. Some TV series do, but not everyone.
Once Upon a Time did, actually, after Emma killed Cruella, I want to say. And I'm like, that to me was interesting because, like Regina, who we all know I love, they've kind of glossed over that fact. You see it a little bit when she's younger, but you never see, like, true switch of when killing became easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that also just changes the way I write when I'm approaching a story, because I have one short story that's a mech story. You're inside a big suit shooting things, and it's never that up close and personal feel. But in Crystal King, you've got people fighting hand to hand, and it gets really messy.
Yeah.
And so the tricky part there is to make it something that's compatible with the audience I want to shoot for. That's not blood, guts, and gore everywhere. Treat it more like you were saying. You have that traumatic experience. People are dying here, to get the importance of that rather than the just plow through the enemies kind of a feel.
Yeah, well, I was, after writing, I sat back and I watched The Matrix for the first time again after that. And I'm just sitting here. How can you not be morally compromised? How can Neo not be morally compromised? Because, he's shooting, these agents. It was the second one. He's shooting the agents at this point because he has his powers.
Oh, Smith.
But these agents are taking over the bodies of people. And these people, yes, they're in a computer program, but those are connected to real people. And if he dies if he gets shot and dies, aren't these people dying?
Yeah, so is he really pulling the plug on that many people as
I
he
know.
fights? Yeah.
I know. So, that's the question. I'm like, how do you not stop? If I'm thinking this, how is he not thinking this? It's a computer game. They're good. Yeah. I don't know.
But yeah, how do you
deal with that?
How do you morally, ethically, any of it?
Yeah. That's kind of the fun part of writing. You get to kind of jump into that psyche without doing it, per se.
And one of the things that I really try to focus on is the goodness of human spirit.
Yeah.
And the positive aspects. There are bad people out there, but I always want to have good win in the end and have it to be difficult for them to win.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on evil being redeemed?
I like that as well. There's a little bit of that going on in my story. I kind of touch on that a little bit as well. But I like the idea of those who are trying to do the right thing eventually succeeding.
Yeah. No, and I think we need that in the story. I think if evil won, I don't think we could connect with that. We can't believe that. We always have the hope that good will always triumph. Good will win. Now, how well good wins, that's always questionable. And I think people are more acceptable of that. I don't know. I don't know if there is a story out there where good or evil has won. I mean,
well, there's the start of one of the Brandon Sanderson stories. Is the bad guy won, and this is what happened because of it.
But that all happened before. We didn't read
Right.
that. It's just bad guy won, evil's here. But then we see good triumph over evil. Yeah, it was still messed up, but good triumphed over evil.
Well, maybe Halloween slasher flicks.
So here's the question about that, though, because, you're talking about being redeemed and everything, but at one point do you say, I compromised myself too much to be truly considered good?
That's a good story. I don't know.
Because if you compromise yourself to the point where the morals and everything you believe in, I don't want to say you've turned your back on, but you've compromised it, does good still win?
Yes, because look at Batman. I mean, that could be an example there.
I mean, it could be.
He has not crossed one line, but he's crossed many lines in the name of justice.
In the name of justice, but
he's still considered a good guy.
And he struggles with that every day, too.
He does. And I think that's the point. If you have someone that no longer struggles over that, they've lost.
So if they stop questioning, is this good, is this bad, that's when...
I think that's when they're no longer good.
Yeah,
that's
I've heard
just my
one way
opinion.
that you can make somebody an irredeemable bad guy is if they kill a puppy dog.
Or
somebody in a book
seal.
kills a dog, they are...
Yeah.
We don't talk about that on this show.
Yeah.
So that's something to never do,
Yeah.
right?
See? Exactly.
I will go full evil queen on them if they go after my puppy.
So that would be an evil act, right?
For me.
Yeah. Most people, that is. I mean, anyone, really? That's a horrible thing.
They're so innocent.
Yeah.
Humans, doggies.
But that's the perfect
innocent.
way to automatically show someone is evil. To be honest, write that scene
Isn't
immediately.
Animal torturing on the psychopathic scale?
Yes,
or something?
It is.
Well, there's your answer there, too.
Yep. It is one of the many signs. Just talk to Dan Wells. He has the entire list.
He probably has the encyclopedia set for that.
He probably does. But
from the sound of it, he might be able to write it.
Oh, he already has. He wrote, his first book was I Am Not a Serial Killer.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Yeah, and he has a whole series on that.
Yeah, and the premise of that story is he's not a serial killer, and it's really by accident.
Yeah. He actually has rules set in place so that he doesn't.
He has all of the tendencies, and he's fighting them.
Yeah, and then he's
like Dexter.
Yeah, kind of like Dexter, but then he starts. There is
bad things are going on.
Bad things are happening, and he realizes this is a serial killer, and ends up finding it's a monster. It's actually a movie. They made it into a movie, and Christopher Lloyd plays the Mr. Crowley that he finds out is the monster.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was actually pretty good. So we're out of time, but you guys need to go check out. The book is available now.
The official release date for the ebook is the 17th of October.
Okay.
I think the print book is already orderable. I'm not sure if it's there for immediate delivery or not, but it might be coming online about the same time.
All right. So pick up a copy of the book. Help John's numbers skyrocket through because, trust me, I've been there. I know it. If you do get a copy, please, please, please give a review. Don't be mean. Give a review. Give an honest review. But that's how authors survive, is through reviews. And if you don't give one, then you're just not helping. I mean, if you like it, put it out there. Let people know so that they know to buy it. Just saying because I know. But go out, get a copy, check out Immortal Works. If you're an aspiring author, check them out because they are always asking for submissions. But definitely pick up the Crystal King and check out John's short stories. Where can they find those?
For which?
The short stories.
Oh, the short stories. You can find all of them on Amazon. If you just connect over to my author page on Amazon, those are all listed there. I've got a couple of horror short stories and several other things listed in there.
Okay.
And recently, just barely released the last week or so, Story Hack Issue 1 is one of my short stories. It's a steampunk story.
Nice.
Ooh,
Bryce's Story Hack. That's awesome. Also, where can they find you on social media if they want to follow you and find out all the fun, crazy stuff you're up to?
Well, let's see. I am on Twitter. Let's see. That would be John_M_Olsen. Facebook, you can find me as well fairly easily. Let's see. What else have I got? Those are the two main ones that I hang out on most.
All right.
I think you can actually get to some of those through my author page on Amazon as well. Because that's connected to my blog. So I think those things are all kind of interconnected. You find one, you should be able to find the rest of them.
So follow John, find out all the craziness he's up to, what cons he's at, what book he's working on next, because this is the first book in a series of 3, and you're going to want to find out more. And with that said, we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.